me? This is Unleash. Are you listening? Can you hear me? This is Unleash. Are you listening? Can you hear me? This is Unleash. Are you listening? Can you hear me?
With your host, Brandon Tierney. In 3, 2, 1.
Good everybody, BT Unleashed back with you. I've got to jump right into it. I don't have as much time today. I've got to get out to St. John's, and I've got to record the TV show with Coach Pitino. A little bit earlier than usual. So today we're talking Yankees. Obviously, yesterday was a big Met day, as Stern spoke the day before. Aaron Boone spoke yesterday. So I want to jump right into this. Ian O'Connor had a pretty interesting article, basically saying, "Hey, it's year 9. It's time to basically win or move on." And I certainly understand the premise. I know that Aaron understands the premise as well. I'm not so sure that the Yankees are going to operate under that premise. That's obviously a different discussion. And that's, to be fair, that's been, I think, part of the consternation on your end as a Yankee fan, or just as a baseball observer. Like, all right, the Yankees used to do this, and they used to aspire to be that. And then when they don't do what they used to do with great frequency, they stand pat. They don't make any changes. All right, so number one, let me get this out of the way. Obviously, I've got great respect for Aaron. I consider Aaron a friend, and I believe that Aaron and I will be friends no matter how long he's the manager of the Yankees. I think he's that kind of a person. I think he's that kind of a human being, and I appreciate his friendship. Having said that, what I'm about to talk about now means nothing. You know, when I'm going to do my job, and it's time to do my job and have a take, I can promise you, even with the Lindor stuff, some of you guys hijacked that yesterday. It's never personal. It's never laced negatively with an agenda. It's never laced positively or shaped overly positively because of a good relationship with somebody. So having said all that, so why do you get rid of a manager in baseball? And there's two reasons. Number one, you underachieve. Number two, there's, friction in the clubhouse, or there's a maybe the messaging's not quite resonating the way it once did. And that's going to manifest itself in a lot of different ways with incredibly sloppy play or, again, just direct underachievement. So we know it's been 8 years. We know Aaron's had a couple of tremendous regular seasons, 103 wins, 100 wins, 99 wins, 92 wins. He's got almost a 60% winning percentage in the regular season. Not to bombard you with stats, but because I don't really think that it's about numbers with Aaron. I think it's about really contextualizing everything and looking at it from every single direction. Now, I want to look at this, right? And, of course, I live this and I know this, but I just want to look down and reference something for a second. So you think about how the Yankees moved on from Joe Torre as the Joe Torre era, withered out and wasn't quite as productive as it was, obviously, for the meat of the Joe Torre era. And same with Joe Girardi after he won in 2009. Yankees made a decision to move on. I think it was very different. I think with Joe, it was, a resistance by Joe to kind of play their way, play their game, whatever. And by the way, get the text in now. J-Rod, get the good ones up because I don't have as long of a show, unfortunately. Anyway, so Perfect Game hoodie. Yeah, big time dad move. That's right. I love Perfect Game. Starts pretty soon. Matter of fact, my son's going out to Houston in late February for, I think it's like the Super 1000. A tremendous ball. And, I've got great affinity for Perfect Game. Anyway. So you look at Joe Torre, right? Think about I'm not even going to get into like the pitching staffs and obviously Mariano, who was amazing. Look, if you want to evaluate this fairly and properly, and I do agree there's an expiration point on anything good. There's no doubt. Like eventually you've got to win, right? Joe Torre pretty much every night would trot out Nobby, Jeter, O'Neill, Bernie, Tino, DH spot, whether it was Darryl, whether it was Chili Davis, a tried and true, respected veteran who could hit. You had Posada, obviously Girardi the first couple of championships. Posada was a terrific, switch hitting catcher with power. And then even when you get to third base, which was a little less settled, obviously Alex got there, but early on, you had Boggs, who was a 300 hitter and an on-base machine, and you had Charlie Hayes, who was a superior defender and a solid player. Then you had Brocious, who, by the way, won the World Series MVP when they swept the Padres and just smacked them around. So think about those names. Nobby, elite leadoff hitter. Jeter, one of the best of all time. O'Neill, prototypical 3-hitter. Bernie, switch hitter. Pop, could run. Phenomenal. Big game chops. Awesome. Tino, prototypical power hitting first baseman, although he didn't strike out like some of the power hitters do today. And he was a very good defensive first baseman. I told you about Darryl, told you about Chili. Throw Tim Raines in there as well. The scouting report on Posada. I just gave you the third base situation. That was Joe Torre, okay? Now, Girardi, and there were a couple of different iterations for Joe, but I'm talking about the championship team. So obviously Jeter's hitting first, right? You know what Derek batted the year that they won the World Series in 09? He hit 334 with an on-base, 334. We're hoping Grisham could replicate 240 again, basically 100 points less, and his on-base percentage was over 40%, which is elite. You know who your number 2 hitter was? Johnny Damon, who could run, who had pop, 24, 25 bombs, hit 280 plus, and he had an OPS of 854. That was your 2 hitter. Your 3 hitter, who they just got and was in the absolute prime of his career, in Mark Teixeira, one of the great right-handed fielding first basemen of all time, switch hitter, so you had balance in the lineup, obviously, separating lefties and righties, blah, blah, blah. And Teixeira that year when they won it in 09, 950 OPS, and obviously cranked out a ton of bombs, 39 home runs, 122 ribbies. That's their 3 hitter. A-Rod, 30 and 100, 933 OPS. Now you get to the 5 spot. You get to Matsui, 90 ribbies, 880 OPS. I know I'm hitting you with a lot of numbers, but this matters today, right? Posada hit 285, had an OPS of almost 900 for a catcher. Cano hit 320 with an 870 OPS. Then you had Swisher, who hit almost 30 home runs, 870 OPS. And even Melky, who floated around, played some center, played from some left, whatever, hit 275 with a 750 OPS and was a very good, versatile defensive player and a pretty good base runner. The 2025 Yankees, you've got to think about what I just read and what I just hit you with to, I think, come to a fair, not a jaded, not a let me shout and yell and just bang on Cashman and bang on Boone and bang on Hal. Now, there's reason to bang on Cashman and there's reason to bang on Hal, but I don't want to turn this into a shout fest and a referendum on all the stuff that we've talked about forever, all right? So you heard basically Joe Torre's everyday lineup. I just gave you Girardi's. By the way, Mike Prince 2036 says, time ran out 2 years ago. They haven't made any changes. Will continue to do so. Unfortunately, Aaron Judge will end up like Donnie Baseball. Great career, no ring. All right, appreciate that. The difference is that Donnie, I got a cup of coffee in 82, like 13 at bats, came up in 83. 84, he really took off, but there was no wild card. So 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93. No playoffs there for Donnie because there was no wild card. And then obviously you've got the cancellation of the 94 season when he would have gotten to it, to the postseason and maybe gotten to the World Series. Yankees and the Expos were clearly the 2 best teams that year. And then of course, he gets there in 95, wild card, and he hits 417. So I know what you mean. Maybe Aaron Judge very well does wind up ringless, but I don't think it's fair it's not really, it's not equivalent. It's not a proper contrast, Judge versus Donnie, based on the expanded format, whatever. So last year, and it's going to pretty much be the same thing, despite Cashman saying he's not running it back in 2025. Who's leading off in all probability? It's Grisham. Now, before last year, Grisham had 3 straight years below 200, was a platoon guy, and a strikeout machine. Do we love Grisham as a leadoff hitter? No. I didn't even really want him back. If he was batting 7th, fine, but he's your leadoff hitter. Judge is the best, number 2. Bellinger's good at 3, okay. I think Ben Rice probably hits 4th. I've got no real issue outside of Grisham with the top 4 spots in the Yankee lineup. But think about the names that I hit you with, right, for some of these other teams. And you're talking about, Tino, Darryl, Chili Davis, Posada, Boggs, Hayes, even though Boggs would bat at the top of the order early, whatever. Those are the names that would basically fill out not even the bottom third, but the last 4 or 5 slots in Joe Torre's lineup. And with Girardi, you had Matsui, Posada, Cano, Swisher, and Melky. All right, now we get to the most problematic part of the Yankees lineup, because even though they're going to have a rough go, I think, early navigating the pitching, and pretty favorable report with Rodon. He seems to be ahead of schedule. I do think eventually Garrett Cole, at most points this year, will resemble the Garrett Cole that we've watched and admired and really, been one of the best pitchers in baseball. It might not happen right away. Might be better next year than this year, but he's coming back, right? So my fear, little sidestep here, is that the Yankees kind of dragged their feet the first couple of months and are playing catch-up in a very tough division and a very talented, loaded division. And that's really not what you want to do to carve out, those mid-90 wins to guarantee, home field advantage and all the things they didn't have a year ago when they lost out on they did with the Red Sox, but the tiebreaker with Toronto when they both won 94 games, right? So, again, Grisham, Judge, Belly, Rice. Okay, I love 3 of them. Grisham is what he is. Now you get to Stanton. Stanton played 77 games a year ago. great, and I know many of you love Jazz, and I've got an appreciation for his night-to-night talents. I promise you, I do. Hit 242, and he's obviously not always there mentally on the bases playing defense. We know the Jazz. We know the Jazz experience, right? It's a lot of good, a lot of excitement, and a lot of confounding stuff. You got McMahon, who at 208 is a Yankee. I don't think he's ever going to hit a whole heck of a lot higher than that. And I think more distressing, a 40% strikeout rate. 40%. Then, of course, Volpe, we've talked about this a million ways sideways. First of all, he couldn't catch a ball for about a month. Then he rectified that, but he's still on base 27% of the time, 25% strikeout rate. Austin Wells, 270 on base percentage, hit 219, 25% K rate. So I just tell you that those are just facts. That's not even me, adding conjecture, or that is just literally looking at sheets and telling you what transpired and contrasting that to previous Yankee managers who obviously, for a lot of reasons, Aaron Boone is always measured against. Let me squeeze this one in real quick. Michael Mara-V9G. Mike, I appreciate that. What's going on, buddy? From the Poconos, Yanks and Jets fan. All right. Any chance Mattingly comes back as a coach? No, he's with Philly now. I mean, I was hoping that would be the case. I'd love to see Don Mattingly. Don Mattingly should be in the Yankee dugout, whether it's and listen, I think if it doesn't work out with Boone after this year, maybe the Yankees do pivot to Mattingly, and I would understand that. But Don Mattingly should, at the very least, be the hitting coach for the Yankees. He's not. He's with Philly. Jazz traded by the All-Star break. I listen, I've been on the record a lot before anybody with Jazz. They're not going to give him a long-term contract. It's not going to happen. So in 3 years, do I think Jazz is here? No chance. In 2 years, no. I don't listen. Could he get dealt next week? Maybe. Could he get dealt by the All-Star break? Sure. Could they mess around and, tender and whatever, and then somebody gives him a better contract and get a draft pick? Yeah, I just don't think, I know that the Yankees aren't going to marry themselves to him. So anyway, going on deployment next month. Glad I'll be able to catch the show. Wow, I'd love to know where you're going. I'd love to know what branch of service you represent. Either way, thank you for that, Michael. Fantastic. God bless you, dude. Awesome. Now, all the stuff that I just threw at you, right? And this is going to be tricky for you guys to do. And at times, to be fair, it's a complicated road for me to navigate. I'm not even talking about Boone. I'm talking about in general. I am asking you, for the purpose of this discussion, just check your emotion at the door. Take those past bullet points, those talking points that you used to call me and sound up. Oh, Boone this, Cashman that. Peck away at the keyboard, the mad tweets, the WhatsApp chain, your buddies texting. This guy stinks. Get rid of Cashman. Boone sucks. Clown show. House cheap. All the things that many of you, not all of you, obviously, but many of you have regurgitated and spat out over the years, some with merit, particularly with Cashman, and then others, I think it's a little bit overboard, and I don't think it's necessarily accurate, right? So as we enter this part of the chat, just check that stuff at the door, all right? Find the coat girl, whatever, leave the coat at the door, come into the party, and let's talk honestly here, right? No agenda, just forthright, honest baseball conversation. Has Aaron Boone ever underachieved a single year as the Yankees manager? Has he ever underachieved? The answer is no. As a matter of fact, the answer is unequivocally no. He has never underachieved. I have not once watched the Yankees team and said, man, this team was absolutely constructed for a World Series championship. What the hell happened? They only won 89 games, or they only won 90 games, and they barely made the playoffs, and they went out feebly against whomever in whatever round. I know, but I just want to be fair to maybe a differing view on this. But I strongly believe that every Yankee season with Aaron Boone has pretty much ended the way, number one, I thought it was going to end. And really, number two, if you look at it fairly and pragmatically, and that's why I say strip away the emotion, there is nobody, I don't care how much you think you know baseball. I don't care how objective you think you're being. There is nobody. I challenge you. Do it right now. Text him up. J-Rod, he's going to get him up, I promise. And I will read it. And if I need to correct myself, I promise I will. There is not 1 year where I walked away saying, my God, what the hell? It's time to get rid of Boone, because I believe an upgrade at manager will elevate the Yankees past the point of where they finished. Now, I'm not be clear about this, guys. I'm not talking about projected preseason win totals or futures on divisional titles or World Series odds. Just go back to last year. Did the Yankees lose to a better team in Toronto? I believe that they did, because every time that they played Toronto during the regular season, Toronto smacked the life out of them. They absolutely punked them, and they owned them, and they were just flat out, straight up better than the Yankees. That's not underachievement. That's coming to the party with a cheap bottle of wine is what it is, or a cheap bottle of scotch. Like, when was the last time? Another question for you. When was the last time that the Yankees, you looked at their lineup and you said, this is a World Series lineup? I'll wait. And you know what? I'm not going to wait that long because it's a condensed show today. So, but I will wait. If I had to wait 10 minutes, there's nobody that can come in with an answer that would satisfy that question, because there is no right answer to that, or no positive answer to that. The right answer is never. But in terms of a positive lineup or a feeling of it, where's the underachievement? All right, you want to tell me, and trust me, it was gross watching the Yankees in the World Series against the Dodgers a couple of years ago. I mean, Jazz, head in space, guys running around the infield, the play with obviously with Volpe and Jazz at third base, obviously Judge dropping the pop-up, one in a gazillion, Garrett Cole late to cover the bag, Rizzo's head is in the clouds as well. I'm not saying that the Yankees played buttoned-up baseball. They didn't. But that's not what prevented them from winning. Now, I will grant you this, and I've told Aaron this, and I'm always going to remain married. There is no way that Nestor Cortez should have been summoned game one with the bases juiced to face Freddie Freeman. I mean, you want to talk about setting a bad tone, a guy who hadn't pitched in a while and a guy that I didn't really think was even that good. Deceptive. All right, we got respect for Nasty, the little herky-jerky, funky wind-up, great. And he had a couple of good years for the Yankees. But did you really think that was going to work out favorably? I'm sitting there saying, no, don't do this, Boone. Bad move. Wrong move. And now I've talked to him about this. He disagrees. And I don't think that he disagrees out of ego. I believe that he really thought that was the right move. That's his prerogative. I disagree. The results proved it was the wrong move, but my reaction to the move as it was transpiring in real time was the same as after it. Why are we doing this? Outside of that, I would love somebody, because there's no answer that's going to satisfy me to the first question. Name the Yankee team that clearly underachieved, right? So then I think the next question, once I get rid of the Cortez stuff, which is true and a viable pushback, no doubt, colossal gaffe there. But then I would like you to now point out other moments, high-profile moments, where Aaron Boone so egregiously mismanaged something that you could point and say, if they had a better manager, they would have won that series and advanced or won the World Series. You can't. You can't. So that's the bottom line. And it's an interesting article that Ian O'Connor wrote. He's a great journalist. He's a Maris guy. I've got a lot of love for Ian. I like him. I know him a little bit. And I think he's an incredible journalist in a world where journalism is basically optional at this point, because everybody's, a columnist at this point, injecting their opinion. And he is a columnist, so this is not about him. But many people who are basically paid to objectively cover the game, they allow biases now it's very rarely reported down the line. By the way, not just sports, but I'm not getting into that today. So Yankees could have, Sean Burke, 903. The Yankees could have won at least 10 more games every year. All right, so we're going to do the math on this in a second. I just want to make sure I'm reading this right. The Yankees have won they could have won at least 10 more games, 10 plus. So maybe Sean means 12 or 15. Sean, maybe they could have won 37 more games if you could dig up, no disrespect, Casey Stengel or Miller Huggins, Billy Martin. Yeah, you're going to win 17 more games with Billy Martin. Oh, okay. His decision-making at times is moronic. Well, first of all, I think every manager makes mistakes. That's clear. Moronic is strong, and he frustrates me, whether it's the batting order at time, whether it's kind of running guys out there and giving them too much rope, like a Volpe, like a Wells at points, a little bit too reliant on veterans. I'm not saying Aaron Boone's perfect. I'm not saying that at all. He's not Miller Huggins. And until he wins, he's not Joe Torre. But let's do the math on that. So again, 8 years Boone's been managing the Yankees, right? 103 wins, 100, 99, 94 twice. So of the 8 years, 5 times, 103, 100, 99, 94, 94. All right. And then, what a massive, precipitous drop down to 92. All right. I'm not counting COVID, where they were about a 55 winning percentage. and would have been a 90-something win team. And what else is new? Back in the playoffs. And I'm not counting, this is not to be selective. I mean, you win what you win, you lose what you lose. But in 2023, when Aaron Judge, and I still, every time I think about that play, because Judge was going to win the MVP, he should have 2 more. Got hosed by the cheating Altuve, Astros scandal punks, and those idiots out west in L.A., they thought it was still good to have a concrete slab that was probably constructed in 1969, still somewhat in the field of play and in a potential outfielder's way. Now, they won 83 games that year, and Judge came back and eventually hit 38 home runs. It was too late. Obviously, season was over. But are you telling me that if Aaron Judge plays what he usually does, that they're going to win 82, 83 games and not make the playoff? No, the answer is no. And if you say otherwise, you're not being fair. What about the playoff, David Garcia? Okay, not great. I mean, what's he doing now? Where's Garcia? I mean, again, I'm talking about egregious mismanagements here. I'm talking about where, something happens outside of Cortez, which is why I beat you to it, because that is fair game, and you are right. I don't see what many of you see. I'm not saying Aaron Boone gets a 20-year job with no repercussions without winning a championship. I'm just trying to thread the needle and be fair to the conversation, and I said I'm not going to start banging on Cashman, but this is why Cashman, for me, must always always infiltrate any conversation about Aaron Boone. Let me ask you this. How'd Joe Torre do with the Mets? How was he? Was he good? No, the Mets were a laughingstock. Did Joe Torre become an exponentially better manager, smarter, more patience, more clarity on the game? He's a baseball lifer, Joe Torre. Broadcaster, Cardinals, obviously the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Mets back in the days of player manager. Those Mets, look it up. When he was the player manager, a couple of years before, like the Tidewater kids came up, Doc and Darryl, before they really took off and became really fun to watch and won their last championship in 86. Those Met teams were heinous. I don't even know what other word to use, man. And I know because my dad watched them all the time. My dad's an old Dodger fan. And while, he let me watch a lot of Yankee games as well, when I'm 6, 7 years old, and he's got what he wants on. That's why I joke around, but I'm not really joking. When I say that I know more about the Mets history than Met fans, I mean it because, I would watch right through Kyler's corner. Anyway, the team was awful, all right? So did Joe Torre suddenly become some amazingly sharp, astute baseball mind? No. He got Jeter and Mo and Bernie and Paul O'Neill and Mariano and Clemens and David Wells and eventually A-Rod and Mike Mussina. And, come on, man. Like, you've got to be fair. And that last text, one of the last texts there, that they'd win at least 10 more games. All right, so you're telling me the Yankees, the year that they won 103, that they were supposed to win 113? Okay, all right. And then the year that they won 100, they're supposed to win 110? Look at the lineups, guys. Look, just contrast what the Yankees used to be and used to have and used to run out there. All-time legends, icons, studs, high IQ, high on base, high average, high contact rate, and look at what Aaron Boone trots out. The last championship, which I'm so tired of referencing 2000. I really am. But the last championship, let's spin you around the horn. How's this for a team? I don't know. Mark Teixeira at first, Robbie Cano at second, Jeter, A-Rod, Posada behind the plate. Let's spin you to the opening day lineup for the infield for the Yankees, the anticipated opening day lineup this year. Now, I love Ben Rice. I think he'll be a decent first baseman. He's going to hit the shit out of the ball. Love him. First base, Ben Rice. I've got a lot of faith in him. I don't even think they're going to retain Jazz, so you know how I feel about Jazz. Caballero and then Volpe is your shortstop, and your third baseman is a guy who strikes out 40% of the time. And your catcher is a guy who's got a 27% on-base percentage. You're supposed to win championships with that? Like, you're just not being honest with the conversation. Now, if you tell me, which I understand this part. If you were to tell me, you know what, BT, you're right. You're right. Well, I mean, you could say I'm wrong, but you can't refute the numbers. You could try. But so many of you sane, open-minded, intelligent baseball fans, not going to push back on everything I just hit you with because it's history and it's documentable, if you will, right? But if you tell me, well, it's been a long time, and maybe it's time for a different message. Oh, okay. I'm here for the conversation. And that was the point of Ian's article. After year 9, all right, what are we doing here? I got it. But understand this, that, and I think one of Aaron's greatest strengths, I've said this a million times, is that he's a stabilizing voice. How many issues have the Yankees had off the field with Aaron Boone? Infighting, lack of chemistry. I'll give you the answer. I'll beat you to it. Zero. None. None. The captain loves him. He's got a great relationship with Judge. Stanton respects him. So I just think that many of you missed the mark. And, I mean, I get it. I guess I get it. But I get it emotionally, but it doesn't make any sense when you actually evaluate it without bias. At NYC2DJ. Appreciate that, buddy. What's going on, man? You telling me he underachieved if he's won over 600 games and hasn't won a World Series? Well, I'm not telling you that. Some might be saying that. I'm saying the exact opposite. That's the point. Like, think about it. So let's say Judge doesn't win. Now, listen, Aaron Judge is better at his job than Aaron Boone is at his. I mean, Judge is the best I've ever seen, right? Better than Griffey. I mean, he's in the Willie Mays, Mantle, Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Ted Williams, Tris Speaker, Ty Cobb, Hank Aaron. I don't know if I said Hank. And if I didn't mean to omit him. One of the best ever. That's where Aaron Judge is. And it's not going to be based on the totality of his numbers. He's not going to get to 700 home runs. Came up too late. COVID season. We're going to miss games next year with the stupid labor stripe that I promise you is going to happen. But if Aaron Judge does not win a World Series, are you going to relegate him to a lower spot on the pecking order of great Yankees? Now, you can. That's your prerogative. I'm not. Because let me ask you a question. What would Babe – now, I mean, Babe's – and I don't know the answer to this because I wasn't around. But would Babe have won all those championships if he didn't have Lou Gehrig hitting behind him? Would he? I don't know. I mean, what would Mickey Mantle be without Yogi and some Moose Skowron and some of those great players? You know what I'm saying? Again, I don't know the absolute answer to it, but I could probably guess that they'd be a couple of championships short. League was also so different, fewer rounds to get to, fewer impediments to trip over. Come on. It's not apples to apples. So, and I'm not saying that Boone's like a Judge or like a Miller Huggins. I'm not. I'm just telling you what's for some reason so many of you just choose to ignore. Because you're still wired into that entitlement. Like, Yanks are supposed to win. Why are they supposed to win? They don't spend like they used to. They don't draft and develop like they used to. And it doesn't seem like they have the urgency to win like they used to. So these are all regurgitated, multi-year, high energy, frustrating, but important conversations that I've had with you, on the radio, on social media for years, right? Because it is applicable because he hasn't won. I'm just providing context. That's what I'm doing. And if you think I'm defending Boone because I'm friends with him, I don't know what to tell you, man. I really don't. Boone, if they were to win 80-something games, got to go. That's it. We hit the limit. And he would know that. He understands it. If Rick Pitino, this is year 3, and Johnny's, by the way, the longest winning streak in the country, 10 straight. So it's the opposite of that now. But, if Rick Pitino came and they had this big NIL fund, which they do, and the Garden was sold out, and they made like one NCAA tournament in 5 years, I'd be like, dude, it didn't work out. As much as I've gotten to know Rick and value Rick as an all-time mind, I think he's the greatest college coach of all time. Eventually, you got to do something. I understand. But you are only, as a manager, especially in baseball, I think if you're a great NFL, like NFL coaching's different than baseball managing. It just is, And if you're a great coach, but you don't have a quarterback, you're not going to win Super Bowls outside of one or two outliers, right? If you are a great baseball manager and you don't have a bullpen at all, or you have a weak starting staff, but you got a kick-ass lineup. But I'm talking about a bottom 10 start, like the Yankees used to have with Mattingly, Ricky, Willie, Donnie, Dave Winfield, stud after stud after stud. They had no pitching. So what happened to that team? Number one, the pitchers didn't give them length. All right. Number two, the bullpen was absolutely fried by when you get to July here. So if you were telling me that, okay, I don't know what a manager could do in that situation. All right, you're trotting out an A-plus lineup, but over the course of 162 in a month of high-pressurized baseball in October, if you can't give the lead to somebody that you trust, you're just not going to win. And I know that Aaron Boone is not given the pieces that a Girardi had, and certainly a Joe Torre had, and certainly a Billy Martin had, You had Thurman, you had Nettles, you had Reggie, you had Catfish, you had Goose, you had Willie Randolph. Come on, man. I mean, just think about not even the bottom third. Think about the last 4 or 5 hitters in the Yankee lineup. You want to grade that out against the lineup that Joe Torre got to put out there every day? Now, I'm not going to minimize what Joe did because I think Joe was tougher behind closed doors than many of you think. I've heard a ton of stories from ex-players like, I mean, the F-bombs and the explosions. When Joe had to let it rip, Joe let it rip. But, I mean, let's call a spade a spade. You walk to the lineup here, or you walk to your car, and you get ready to, ride out the lineup. You park the car in the stadium parking lot. You go into the clubhouse. Let me see. Nobby's going to steal 30 bags, hit 280, lead off. Jeter, one of the best righty, hitters and all-time clutch players of all time. 6th on the all-time hit list. Put him 2. O'Neal, 6'5" lefty who hits for average and power. Doesn't strike out much. Great right fielder. Put him 3. Come on, man. And same with obviously the last team that won with Girardi. Let's see. Who am I going to play at first base? Well, Mark Teixeira. Yeah, we gave him a boatload of money, but that's what we used to do. Switch hitter, power, 39 and 120, high average, great fielding first baseman, breaks up the lefties and the righties. I'll put him in the 3 or the 4 hole. You know what I mean? And then, by the way, what a massive drop-off. God, how do we survive a down year like 30 and 100 RBIs from Alex Rodriguez? Just be honest with the situation. You don't have to love Aaron Boone. You don't even have to believe in Aaron Boone, but you have to understand the cards he's been dealt. Joe Torre was dealt pocket aces. Now, I'm not a big poker player. I've talked about this. Poker's too slow for me, the way my mind goes. That's why, when I play, I like to play blackjack, and I like to play 2 hands, and I like to do all the side bets. I need the action. I need cards flipping. I need to calculate fast. Boom, 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 flip more. All right, one flip. All right, lost, whatever. Double down, split them. That's how I play blackjack. And the reason why I'm terrible in poker is because I get bored. And when I get bored, I do stupid things. I could be sitting there with a non-suited 3 and 8, when I get dealt out of the shoot here. And I'm like, fuck it, I'll play. I'm bored. I sat out the last 4 hands. I want some action. You're not going to win that way. So Joe Torre, not only was he handed great players, but he was handed a great culture that was established by Buck Showalter. Girardi was handed a great roster and an offseason where they spent $250 million basically 20 years ago. Think about that. What's Boone have? Well, he's hoping Ben Rice can become a serviceable first baseman. His second baseman, incredibly electric, but he's a space cadet. He'll have a shortstop. Third baseman could pick it like Nettles. He hits like shit. Wells, I like Wells, but you are what you are. You're never on base. You're a strikeout machine. All right, you hit some bombs. Great. You frame the ball well. Great. Your center fielder, you'd think that they just brought back Bernie or Mickey Mantle or Joe DiMaggio. He was hitting 190 before he got here, man. You know what I'm saying? So, I do get frustrated with this because it's crazy how much and how many of you miss it. I don't get it. At GMerger37, they don't need all-stars at every position. They need guys who do their job in roles. I agree with that. They are so one-dimensional, 1 through 9 in the lineup, bad defense around the diamond, horrible base running, etc. I think that was more, thank you for that. I think that was more applicable before last year's additions. Like when they got Rosario, at least he's going to hit lefties. Now, you don't want to put him at shortstop. He's a horrible shortstop, but play a little third, play a little second, DH if you want to get somebody off his feet against a lefty. Good addition. Caballero, if he plays every day, he'd steal 75 bases. He runs like the wind. And he's an energy guy, and he fits the club. I know Boone loves him, and I know the team loves him, right? He's just he's kind of like Alvarado. Oh, how awesome was that? Timeout, 20-second timeout. It's actually sad when Mitchell Robinson gets, and the Knicks fans just, Philly, you should be embarrassed. I know Embiid, I get it, but to allow Knicks fans to take over repeatedly, including the playoffs, to walk into your crib and put their feet up in your house and just dismantle you basically every time they play you. I mean, what a joke. I mean, it's awesome from a Knicks fan's perspective, and I don't think this team's going to win the championship. I'm on the record with that. But how about that? Mitchell Robinson's on the floor, and this is part of the problem with the Knicks. The smallest dude on the court's got to come in and step up. He's like that, like I don't want to call it, he's not a poodle because he's got that Rottweiler pit bull mentality, but he's like the little, and I say this with respect, the little runt of the Rottweiler crop, if you will. and he's the smallest, but he's got the loudest bark and he's got some bite. So that was great to see. And then he just put on a show, draining threes, the knock behind steals. I love when he does that, my God. And it was fun. And the energy he brings is amazing. But if Alvarado's not on the court last night, say if he's on the bench, or if he's not on the team, is anybody stepping to anybody on the Sixers for putting Mitchell Robinson on the ground again? Like Embiid did tripping him in the playoffs a couple of years ago? No, they're not. And that's one of the fundamental issues with the Knicks. But I did enjoy last night. Very, very fun game. And you knew he was bringing that spunk, which is why I loaded the move. Big Alvarado fan. It was great. I mean, he's hitting threes, and he's an okay shooter. So that's not exactly who he is, but career high in points and just in the middle of the friction. And it wasn't like, yeah, let me just give you a little token. Like he was hanging around. He was looking for a little bit of smoke. I loved it. It was great. Yeah, Slay_kids. Jose. Looking like Starks last night. A little bit. I like that. That's true. That is true there. So what is this here? Hang on a sec. What do we got here? At Avery Summit BT could argue Boone bringing in Nestor to face Freddie in the World Series Game 1. Lost the series for him. The momentum swing it caused. That's all on Boone. That is a deep extrapolation that I don't know the answer to, but I'll give that a little bit of credence. Sorry about that. That absolutely changed the tone of certainly of Game 1. And who knows? I'll never know the answer to that. Awful move. And he doesn't think it was awful. I do. He respectfully and sometimes even, aggressively pushes back every time I bring it up. That's just my opinion. It was the wrong move. I said it before he went to the pen. I said it on the radio that day because there was rumblings that Nestor was going to come out of the pen. And I'm like, I'm not putting him up in a high leverage spot. Yanks are up 7-3. Yanks are down 7-3. Got a little wiggle room. That's fine. He had not pitched in a while. So number one, he doesn't have overpowering stuff as it is. He throws 91 miles an hour. He's got to be perfect. And when you're that kind of a finesse feel pitcher, when you don't have the feel of being on the mound in real competition, I don't mean side sessions, simulated stuff. I don't know what you thought was going to happen. Maybe get him out in front, roll it over to second base. I'm sure that's what he was thinking. He didn't think he was going to give up a grand slam moonshot. Awful move. But there was still a lot of baseball to go in that series. And to me, the Yankees, the difference was stark. And oh, yeah, by the way, the Yankees were massive underdogs in that series to win, which goes back to my ultimate point. I'm still waiting for somebody. J-Rod, I'm still waiting for somebody to point it out, the moment where the Yankees truly underachieved. And that's the message for today. That's the message.
It's not coming.
It's because it's not there, Jay. It's not there.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything. Although, what I'll say, something about just another 20-second timeout here.
20-second timeout on the floor.
Alvarado last night.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's like, he's probably 6 foot 6'1", but when he squared up against, I forgot who it was on the Sixers, one of the taller dudes, you really believe it. You really you're like, this guy's ready for the smoke. He's ready to take it to him. So I feel like what you were saying the other day, Knicks need a gritty player. They've got their guy.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And then he did flex, and you get the little tiny muscles popping. He's ready to get after it. He fits in awesome. No, I'm with you. That was a lot of fun for the Knicks there. What is this? How about this? He would work, Mike. The issue, let's see, a little bit too. I would have make sure I know what we're talking about. This is D_Ron. Is the issue is might be too rough on the modern sensitive player. Why or he I think he wrote that wrong, or I'm reading it wrong. It might be on me. Why wasn't Volpe sent down to AAA when it was obvious that he needed that because he can get PTSD and obviously have some issues from that point? Listen, I didn't think that Anthony Volpe needed to be sent down. Now, a lot of people disagreed. Sal thought he should. I didn't look at it that way. To me, now he didn't really represent a viable major leaguer at that point. True. What I was going to say was the only reason you should be sent down. They might, if Dominguez starts the year in the minors, I'm going to lose it, man. Because he might. The only reason why I would send somebody to the minors, I'll be if you're hurt, you got to get, just get it away from the bright lights, get your timing down. That's obvious. Number two, you're a young player and you're not playing, which would apply to Dominguez. I would just say I would play Dominguez every day in left field and say, whatever, just catch the ball, hit, and figure it out. Or, if you are so shaken, like Roy Halladay, rest in peace, he was sent down to A-ball to Dunedin back in the day. So I'm not saying that it can't help players, but it's just my opinion. And I can understand the pushback on this. this is open to a debate for sure. Not now necessarily, but I understood why people were saying this in real time. Like when you no longer represent what you look like for a while and you look to be broken, like your spirit. And I do think that applied to an extent with Volpe. Maybe a little respite, just a mental reprieve away from the Bronx, away from the fans, go and play Scranton Wilkes-Barre, go play up in Syracuse against the Mets. Like, all right, maybe that would have done some good. I don't know. But to me, there's fundamental mechanical issues sometimes with how he fields and certainly the way he swings and his approach. Is that going to be addressed in the minors? Well, I don't think so. Not over the course of 3 weeks. So I was never really on board with that. But all right, I guess I get it. At Stuff and Thangs, 3953. What up, Stuff? Aaron Judge, a great regular season. But as Michael K. said on the A-Rod documentary, that was great, by the way, you defined what you do in the postseason. Aaron Judge barely shows up with the game on the line. Up until last year, that was 100% true. He was a 0 in the postseason. Thank you for that text. I hear you. I'm not here to refute history. Like, I don't argue math. I don't do it. It's really one of the dumbest things you could do. I don't. Now, I might offer context on numbers, right? And data, but I don't argue math because it's an unwinnable battle. And when you hit 190 or 206 and you have a massive strikeout rate and, you leave a ton of guys on base and runners in scoring position, all the numbers that we measure the great players by, when they are what they are, I'm not pushing back, which is why I was saying last year, Judge, you got to wake up. I mean, it's not like you get one series and you've got 13 at-bats and you hit 097. Like, you've been going to the postseason for a while as a New York Yankee because they basically always get you there. Well, you always get them there, more specifically. But I do think it's different than the other sports. Like, I've said this a lot. Take any great NBA champion, take a Kobe, take a Bird, take a Magic, take a Shaq, take a Steph Curry, take a KD with Golden State, take a Kareem, any of those great names, right? Even Jerry West, who always lost except once. But those guys, when you get to the NBA Finals, like you're an all-star, all-NBA, say you average 28 points a game, you're not going to have a series in the finals where you suddenly go from 28.5 points a game in a regular season down to 16.9 in the playoffs. Like, there's never that drop. Never. Now, the shooting percentage might drop a little bit. You might average 24.5 or 25 instead of 28. 3-point might be... if you're a 38% shooter, you might have a series where you shoot 22, even somebody like Steph Curry. It happens. But the actual, like, production, like batting average or points, I'm not saying those are the most important measurements, but there will not be any fluctuation there. Whereas with baseball, do yourself a favor. Again, small samples. I bet you didn't know this. I do. Why? Because I do my research. Because this topic comes up a lot. Willie Mays, career OPS in the postseason, under 700. Under 700. Now, does Willie Mays get kicked around? Or is Willie Mays, and he shouldn't, I'm not saying he should. Yeah, you can make the case that Willie Mays is the greatest all-around baseball player in the history of baseball. My dad's always said that. Matter of fact, my dad is, now, I know how things get embellished over time, and I went looking for the video. I couldn't find it. I saw some articles that did back this up. My dad was telling me, I don't know what year, the Giants and the Dodgers were playing at Ebbets Field, right? And there was like a sinking liner. Just imagine somebody doing this today. And there's a guy on third base tagging up, obviously, less than 2 outs. And it's not a rope because you'd break your hand, but it's like one of those soft loopers, kind of shortish center field. And Willie Mays comes flying in, catches it with his bare hand, and throws a one-hop dart to the catcher. Guy retrieves back to third. Now, I did see some stories that back that up. And my dad's not a liar. Yeah, he said, so I believe him. But think about that. I mean, Willie could run, could hit, could do it all. Amazing. But Willie Mays, like everybody else, even Bonds to an extent, grew up in an era where there was not some micro dissection of every at-bat. All right, Willie Mays goes 0 for 4. All right, there's going to be an article in the newspaper. Willie Mays might get the horns. Bill Gallo. I don't even know if Bill Gallo was doing that when Willie was playing. Probably when Willie was with the Mets in 73. I don't think Gallo, I could be wrong. The cartoonist from the news back in the day. And like when a guy would have a bad game, he did the hero and the GOAT. And I remember the GOAT. But it's funny. Think about what the GOAT means now and think about what it meant then. GOAT. You're a GOAT, man. Ugh, what a dog. GOAT. Ugh. We lost it because of this guy. Dog. GOAT. Now it's greatest of all time, the acronym. But Willie Mays might see a picture of himself with goat horns popping out of his head Of course, there's going to be a recount of the game. Nobody's calling up WFAN shitting on Willie Mays' legacy. That's not happening because there was no WFAN to do. Now, if there was, I'm sure that would have happened. All right. But the point is, I think the guys that played back in the day, number one, they were insulated and shielded from much of the criticism, which is ever present from every direction now, number one. And, number two, for whatever reason, over the years, like the lore, not that they weren't great players. I've just said Willie may have been the best of all time, but the way we remember certain things kind of embellished. Even somebody like Patrick Ewing, who I always defend, but you talk to Knicks fans, and me and Sal would always disagree about this, right? Because, when Patrick played against Olajuwon in the 94 finals, and I love Pat, the big fella, one of my favorites of all time. You guys know that. But he got his ass handed to him against Hakeem. Shot 37%, averaged 16.9 points a game. Like Hakeem Olajuwon ran circles around Patrick Ewing in the NBA Finals. Now, if Patrick would have played better, and if Patrick would have had Hakeem's numbers, and if Patrick would have limited Hakeem to what Hakeem limited Patrick to, guess what? The last Knicks championship wouldn't be 1973. It would be 94, But even somebody like Pat, who was on the back end of, because he did get criticized a lot too, but I feel like even he has been a little uplifted, and rightfully so, to an extent, and protected. Like, people carry the torch for, the big fella. He didn't have a lot around them, which we all know. But at the end of the day, there were a lot of games. I was at a lot of those playoff games. Patrick missed key free throws. Hugh Hollins, the call with Hubert Davis. I was at that game. That was a phantom call. Hubert hits the foul shots, bails out Pat, who missed free throws before that. So we're just very selective in what we tend to illuminate good and what we tend to illuminate bad. And I just think that this is a little bit of a side, anecdote. I just think that today's athletes are largely unfairly judged, and they're held to a standard that's not really real. Like, if you listen to some people, you would think that Willie Mays hit 1,000 and Babe Ruth hit 1,000. They never made it out. Tom Seaver never had a bad start. Never. Didn't you know that? Tom Seaver if he made 33, now he threw a ton of innings, and he really didn't have many bad ones. I think you could make the case Tom Seaver's the greatest right-handed starter of all time. You can make that case. I'm not making it now. Him, Pedro, short list, you can make it. But you listen to some of these old timers, Tom Seaver never got touched up, never gave up a clutch home run. Never walked a guy and, a bloop and a blast or whatever. Mets lost a big game. Trust me, he did, because it's baseball. Let me get It's Matt Macho? Is that a martial arts thing? Sounds like it might be. Anyway, do you want your friend Aaron Boone extended after year 10? How many more successful seasons with him are you okay with without getting over the top? Well, that's a great question. I'm going to answer it incredibly honestly. If the Yankees were to go, again, I've got to layer it with like something that I think could happen to give you a real answer. If the Yankees are barely a playoff team this year, and if they look bad in round one and they get ousted, it's time for change. And Boone will be the first one to tell you. At that point, time for new voice. Yep, I would say it. I'm saying it now. Trust me, I'll say it then. If the Yankees win their regular 90-something with a beat-up pitching staff to start the year and 3 or 4 guys at the bottom of the order who stink, and they still win the 93, 94 that they always win minimally, and they win a playoff round and they lose to a better team because the other team maybe made a great trade deadline move or they're just better, I'm not going to get on the air and say fire Boone. I'm not going to do it. Now, I'm also not going to be sitting here in 5 years talking about Aaron Boone, entering year 13 or 14 with no championships. There is an expiration point on everything. There just is. But I don't think the reasons supplied by many of you are either accurate or fair. I think it's laced too much with emotion. And as I gave you the sequence of a Torrey or a Girardi sitting in their manager's office before the game, Nobby, Jeter, O'Neal, Bernie, it's pretty easy. Or, Jeter and Teixeira and Posada and all the great studs that obviously, and A-Rod that Girardi had. Like, whose job do you think is easier? Whose job do you think is easier? I could make the case that if Joe Girardi had this lineup, they would have won 88 games last year. Not 94. And I could say the same thing about Joe Torre. Because I saw Joe with bad Met teams, and with the Cardinals, You know what I mean? That's all I'm saying. This is not some blind defense of Aaron Boone. This is me reacting to a story that is going to be either, several more chapters long, or it's going to end. And if it ends, fine. It's just got to end for the right reason. It should end because of the noise. And also understand this, when it does end, because you're not going to coach forever, you're not going to manage forever, understand the next guy that's here might not be that good with the media, might not run a good clubhouse. You could tell me Aaron Boone's too laid back. And if you're so laid back, wouldn't you think he'd underachieve at some point? Was he supposed to turn Luke Voit into some great defensive first baseman? Think about all the second basemen that the Yankees have had under his watch. Think about the shortstops. Think about every position but right field and the ace and Garrett Cole. Think about it. And if you do think about it and you're fair, I think most of you agree with me. And if you don't, whatever. I don't need you to. I don't care. I'm just telling you how I feel. You know what I mean, J-Rod?
Big time. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm feeling good today, man. On fire. Yesterday, by the way, was awesome. Shout out. You saw the pictures? I think you saw the pictures. Cross Country Mortgage.
Yeah, no, it looked great.
It was amazing. Had this beautiful, beautiful bar restaurant over in Pearl River. About 75 high-level salespeople, executives. Cross Country Mortgage, the largest lending mortgage firm in the country, and they just won the cup. It's like the mortgage cup. They're the $1.5 billion cup. So they asked me to come and speak, and you guys know that I do the motivational circuit, speaking engagements. I've got one with Verizon coming up next week. It was absolutely awesome. Ton of sports fans, great room, really productive day. It was awesome. I want to give them a shout out. Great company, great people. It was good.
Let's go.
Yeah, man.
All right, quick question.
Yes, sir.
So what does this entail? So you go in, you fire them up. How do you fire these people up? How do you get them going?
Well, I think the first thing you do, it's a good question, is you remain who you are. You keep it real. Now, there's different types of motivational speaking. I've done both, right? And I love both. There's some where it starts with a Q&A, and there's a guide, so to speak, a moderator. And, you're usually up on a stage, obviously in front of the room, and he kind of gets things, and you kind of follow his script, and then, you just take it and you really expand on stuff. So to me, I think the starting point, number one, you have to have a message, all right? And a lot of it is, especially now, I think it's made me a more potent, more effective motivational speaker based on what I've gone through. Sure, if I was still at the Fan, it would have been effective as well, because I could talk about my journey and how hard you have to work and how resilient you have to be to keep that job and all that, which is true, right? But when that was taken away and I had to pivot and I had to really look in the mirror and say, all right, I mean, I got a pretty heavy mortgage. I got a couple of nice cars in the garage. I got college funds. I've got life insurance. I got, 401k. I got a lot of things, a lot of bills, $4,000 to play club baseball. These bats are $400. Shit ain't cheap, man.
Yeah.
So it's given me a different layer, I think, of effectiveness, because it's made my words seem more real, because they can see the pivot that I've made and not feeling sorry for yourself. So I think it's made me a more effective public speaker. And then and I was up there for a good hour and a half.
Wow.
And then you get some Q&A from the audience, a lot of sports questions, some personal things about, like just grinding through and perseverance and starting up a new platform. But you've always got to find a way. And that's obviously like you're selling mortgages, right? Mortgage rates. So there's a skill set there. And what I'm doing here is I'm selling myself. I'm selling myself literally based on my sports acumen or my sports opinions and my presence and my entertainment and my content and all that stuff. And you've got to find a way to marry that. Like the room's not getting on a YouTube show this morning talking about Aaron Boone, but they are in a situation where they've got to communicate what they believe to a potential client, get them to buy into it, trust it, believe it, and then sign on with them. So there's always there's always a commonality, is what I'm saying. It was awesome.
Very interesting.
Yeah, I love it, man. I love it. I love it. I love doing it with kids. I think I'm going to speak in Staten Island. I know they reached out to me over at Great Kill, where my son plays there a lot. Not for Staten Island, but he's there a lot. Great snack stand out there. You guys know what I'm saying, if you know what I'm saying. They've reached out, and I like having different rooms. Like, for the Verizon room, yesterday's room, it was an open bar, so I was sitting up there with a pint of beer.
Fun.
Whereas Verizon, it'll be more It's about 200 executives. Yeah, so it's a different. Everybody in yesterday's room is incredibly accomplished as well, but this is more on the executive side. I don't, last time I did it, there wasn't an open bar, so it's a little different. You read the room, but at the end of the day, dude, communication and inspiration and messaging is really transferable to any group, Now, listen, I'm sure there were some people in there like, all right, when's it gonna, like, because it was a long day for them. I was the keynote speaker. They had a few others, but I've been in those situations too, where I'm like, all right, this is getting late. I got to go to the bathroom. I got to take care of this, whatever. But no, it's awesome. And it was an honor to do that. So I wanted to give them a shout out, thank them. And then I've got Verizon next month, some Little League stuff, some universities. And if you guys want to, if you got a business, there's a spot on the YouTube, on YouTube, where right beneath my bio, there's an email. You guys could reach out. We can get the wheels in motion. I'm not going to say yes to everything. I'm certainly not that desperate where I'm saying, oh, yeah, sure. There's going to be business elements that we'd have to do. And more specifically, it has to be something I believe in and something I would want to align myself with. And there's a lot of companies like that. So it was really fun. It was good. I enjoyed it. All right, man. What else? It's getting late. All right, I got to get out to St. John's. Hook me up with, let's see, give me one or two other good messages here. So, okay, what do we got here? Time should be running out on Cashman as much as Boone. That's my point. Yeah, he wasn't the architect of the Yankees 90s dynasty. That was Stick Michael. You're right. At Tim Thomas. Is that the Fugazi Tim Thomas? Remember that with the Knicks and the Nets? 80-80. Thank you for that, Tim. No, I mean, he was not the architect of the 96, 98 teams. For sure, that was Bob Watson. But there was really more Stick Michael. And the old story goes where George was suspended and George was at his petulant worst. Thank God he got suspended. And I love him. But let's not recreate the narrative around George. If you're a Yankee fan and you're old enough to have seen a lot of, well, basically most of George, there were times you couldn't stand George. So when they banished him, I'm like, thank God this dude's out of here. Because he was telling Stick, trade Pettit, trade Mariano, trade Bernie. And Stick Michael, the way the story goes, is Stick basically said, hey, man, I tried. There's no market for him. We're getting 60 cents on the dollar. It's not worth it. Nobody valued. He never even made the calls. He never even investigated trading Andy Pettit. So, that's obviously a little misleading. Like, you think, well, Cashman won it all. No, he didn't win it in 96 and 98. That was the early seeds. And then, of course, 09 is all him. And then, of course, later on, making a trade for justice and doing all the things he did. He gets a lot of credit for that, for sure. But no, his resume is not quite what some maybe younger Yankee fans think. All right, last one here. Got to bounce. Avery Summit, a consistent watcher and consumer of the show. Thank you. In 8 years, has Boone ever admitted a move he made was a mistake? Never. He goes to it was his lane. The numbers said this, the righty matchup. Yeah, he's one for his last 128, 1 for 28, but ready to break out. You get a lot of that. I hear you. I don't know if he's never admitted his mistakes. I mean, I don't know that I'd quite say that. I think that's a little bit unfair and a little bit of an inaccurate representation, but point taken. I think there's been, many times where Aaron does, lean on the lane or certain words. And by the way, we all reach for certain words. Maybe a little bit too reliant on the numbers. I remember there was a couple of games where, young players would get a few knocks and then they might not be there the next day. And I'm like, just run him out there. I don't care about the matchups, man. He looks good. He's confident in the plate. Now, at the plate, I also see the counter argument to that. Like, if it's a bad matchup, maybe in his mind, it's like, all right, well, he's in a good spot now the last two games. This is a hellacious matchup, and I'm going to sit him, so I don't want to risk of increasing the odds of the good vibe ending by going up against somebody he hasn't proven he can hit, or the splits aren't favorable, whatever. But that's relying on numbers. And, as Boone is pushed back, because this rubs him the wrong way, and I don't blame him, because the one thing that I got to really go, you can't disagree. Like, when the Yankees win and the Yankees do something well, Aaron Boone never gets credit. Zero. Never. And when something goes awry, he's always the first one to get hit on the chin, which is not fair or accurate. It could be little pieces of both. Yanks rock. I mean, obviously Judge, but if you're the manager and you win a lot of games and you're always a playoff team, you've got to get some respect and you've got to get some reward and some recognition. And I think people shortchange him there. And I think they're a little quick to pile on, Boone did this, Boone did that, numbers that. I'm not saying it doesn't apply at all. I just don't think there's enough balance. But that's just me. You guys disagree. That's why the world spins the way it does. It's all good. Hey, like it, subscribe it. J-Rod, get those shorts out as soon as you can. Appreciate it. Tomorrow, my guy is coming right after the show. So I believe, unless something goes really wrong, which I don't expect, then Monday's show will have the new backdrop and the new studio redesign. And then we start rolling in some guests. I've got great commits. Stephen A. said he'll do it. Michael K. said he'll do it. You know, I'll get Boone on at some point. Patino, A-Rod, LeGrec is going to come on. I want to get Tiki on, talk some Giants. Of course, I'll get Sal back on. So all that stuff is coming. I appreciate you guys. You know that. I appreciate the support. Like it, subscribe it, spread the word, comments, hypes, all that stuff that you know by now. Do it. Let me roll. Have a great rest of your Thursday. Back tomorrow with 10 Unleashed in the house. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.
This is Unleash. Are you listening? Can you hear me? This is Unleash. Are you listening? Can you hear me? This is Unleash. Are you listening? Can you hear me? This is Unleash. Are you listening? Can you hear me?
With your host, Brandon Tierney, is 3 2.